Ambassador Varel had spent 3 long cycles studying humans. He had read every report. He had watched every recording. He had memorized their history, their wars, their strange customs. He believed he understood them as well as any Koran could understand such a young and violent species. He was wrong. The day the human military delegation arrived at Station Thatnine, Varel stood in the docking bay with his security team. The station orbited a gray moon in neutral space, far from any homeworld. It was a place for careful meetings and quiet negotiations. The Galactic Union had chosen it specifically because nothing exciting ever happened there. Varel expected diplomats. He expected soft humans in formal clothing, carrying documents and speaking in careful words. The report said humans could be reasonable when they wanted to be. The shuttle doors opened. Sergeant Major Park Tae-ho stepped out first. He was not tall by human standards. He was not especially large. He wore simple combat fatigues in gray and green, and he carried no visible weapons. But the way he moved made Varel's scales tighten against his body. It was an old reflex, something his species had developed millions of years ago. When predators still hunted them in the swamps of their homeworld, Taeho's eyes swept the docking bay in 2 seconds. Varel watched those eyes move. They noted every door, every shadow, every person. They calculated distances and angles. They found threats that did not exist and dismissed them. Just as quickly, then 40 more soldiers walked out behind him. They moved in perfect formation. No one gave orders. No one spoke. They simply flowed out of the shuttle like water, each one finding their position without hesitation. Their boots made almost no sound on the metal floor. Varel's security chief, a large Koran named Das, leaned close to him. "Ambassador," he whispered, "these are not diplomats." "No," Varel agreed. "They are not." Human officer approached them. She was young, perhaps 30 cycles by human counting, with black hair pulled back tight against her head. She saluted in the human fashion and introduced herself as Captain Mun Yuna, liaison officer for the delegation. "The soldiers are just an honor guard," she explained. Her voice was pleasant. Her smile was warm. "Standard protocol for military negotiations. They will remain in the background." Varel looked at the soldiers standing in their perfect lines. They were completely still. Not frozen, not stiff. Just still, the way a river is still before it becomes a waterfall. "Of course," he said. "We welcome them." The negotiations began that afternoon. Varel sat across from human generals and admirals, who spoke about border agreements and trade routes. They were professional. They were polite. They made reasonable offers and accepted reasonable compromises. But Varel could not focus on the words. He kept looking at the soldiers standing along the walls. One of them was a young female. Her name tag said Kim Hannah. According to the files Varel had requested, she was 19 years old. She had been a soldier for 11 months. She was classified as a private, the lowest rank in the human military structure. She was nobody. She was nothing. She was a child playing at war, but Varel watched her notice a maintenance drone malfunctioning near the ceiling. The drone was small, barely visible, making a faint clicking sound as its motors failed. Hannah's eyes found it instantly. She tracked its movement. She calculated where it would fall. And without taking a single step, without breaking her position in the formation, she shifted her weight slightly to the left. If the drone fell, she would be able to catch it before it hit Ambassador Varel. She did all of this in less than 3 seconds. Then her eyes returned to scanning the room, and she was still again. Varel felt cold. During a break in the negotiations, he found Das in the hallway. His security chief was pale, his scales pressed flat against his skull in a sign of deep unease. "Tell me what you see," Varel said. Das shook his head slowly. "I see soldiers, Ambassador, but not like any soldiers I have ever seen. Our elite guards train for 10 cycles before they reach this level of awareness. Our special forces train for 20. These humans," stopped, struggling to find words. "These humans are children, barely adults, and they move like assassins." "Perhaps they are assassins," Varel suggested. "Perhaps the humans sent their best to intimidate us." "No. Das pointed at a datapad he was holding. I checked their records. These are regular infantry. Standard soldiers. The humans have classifications for their elite forces. Rangers. Special operations. Something they call Delta. Something they call SEALs. He looked at Vrel with something close to fear in his eyes. These soldiers standing in our halls right now? They do not qualify for any of those classifications. They are considered ... average. Vrel said nothing for a long moment. Average, he repeated. Average. That night Vrel could not sleep. He stood at the observation window of his quarters and watched the stars turn slowly around the station. His mind kept returning to Private Kim Hanna. 19 years old. 11 months of training. Classified as average? What did exceptional look like? He thought about the reports he had read. Humans were strange creatures. They came from a world that tried to kill them constantly. Earthquakes, floods, predators, disease, ice ages, and heat waves, and everything in between. They had evolved not to avoid danger, but to face it. Their bodies healed remarkably fast. Their minds adapted to trauma with disturbing efficiency, and they trained their children to fight almost from birth. Human children played games of war. They built fortresses from cushions and conquered imaginary enemies. They wrestled and raced and competed in everything. By the time they reached adulthood, every human had a basic understanding of combat, strategy, and survival. Then some of them joined the military. Vrel pulled up the files on human military training. He read about something called basic training, 16 weeks of physical conditioning, weapons training, tactical education, and psychological preparation. Every soldier, regardless of their future role, went through this process. He read about what came after. Specialized schools, advanced courses, continuous training throughout a soldier's career. The humans never stopped preparing for war, even during peacetime. And all of this produced what they considered regular soldiers. Vrel closed the files. He looked at the stars again, somewhere out there in human space. There were soldiers who made Private Kim Hanna look like an amateur. Soldiers who trained longer, fought harder, and did things that humans did not discuss with outsiders. Special forces, as they called them. Vrel decided in that moment that he never wanted to meet one. He was not sure the galaxy was ready to know what humans were truly capable of. He was not sure the galaxy would ever be ready. In the docking bay below, Sergeant Major Park Tae-ho was running his soldiers through a midnight drill. They moved through the empty corridors like ghosts, practicing formations and responses that they had practiced 10,000 times before. They were regular soldiers. They were average. They were nothing special, and they were the most dangerous thing Ambassador Vril had ever seen. Mora Station was a small place. It floated in the darkness at the edge of disputed space, far from any government's protection. 1,200 people lived there, mining rare metals from asteroids and shipping them to whoever paid the best price. It was not important. It was not strategic. It was just a place where people worked and lived and tried to survive. 47 of those people were human. Lieutenant Yoon Dae-sung was not supposed to be on Mora Station. He was a logistics officer, a man who spent his days counting supplies and filling out forms. He had been returning from leave when his transport stopped at the station for refueling. He had decided to stay an extra day to visit an old friend who worked in the mining division. That decision saved many lives. The Veth hegemony attacked at dawn. Station time. 3 warships dropped out of hyperspace and surrounded Mara Station before anyone could send a distress call. 300 Veth warriors boarded the station through 4 different entry points. They were elite shock troops, bred and trained for close combat. Their bodies were covered in natural armor. Their claws could cut through metal. They had conquered dozens of worlds and never lost a battle. They expected easy prey. They found something else. Dasun was eating breakfast in the common area when the first explosion shook the station. He was on his feet before the sound faded, his eyes already scanning for exits and cover. Around him, the other humans reacted almost as quickly. They did not panic. They did not freeze. They moved. A Koran miner sitting nearby stared at them in confusion. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Getting ready," Dae-sung said. He grabbed a metal tray from the table. It was not a weapon, but it was better than nothing. The Veth breached the eastern corridor 6 minutes later. 20 warriors poured through the broken airlock, their weapons raised, their battle cries echoing through the metal halls. They expected screaming. They expected running. They expected the easy slaughter they had experienced on every other station they had raided. The first warrior through the door took a mining laser to the face. Corporal Beak. Sujin was a communications specialist. She had never been in combat. Her job was to sit in quiet rooms and make sure messages went where they needed to go. But she was also human. And humans learned certain things whether they wanted to or not. She had grabbed the mining laser from a storage locker 3 minutes after the attack began. She did not know exactly how to use it as a weapon, but she knew how to point it at something and pull the trigger. The Veth warrior fell. His companions hesitated for half a second, surprised by resistance. They had not expected that half-second cost them. Desong had spent the last 3 minutes organizing the human civilians into something resembling a fighting force. There were 16 of them, including himself and Sujin. Most were miners and engineers. None were combat trained, but they all understood the basic principles. Find cover. Find weapons. Protect each other. Do not stop fighting until the enemy stops moving. The humans hit the Veth from 3 directions at once. Mining tools became clubs and spears. Industrial equipment became barricades and traps. The narrow corridors of the station, designed for efficiency rather than combat, became kill zones where the Veth's superior numbers meant nothing. Sujin, meanwhile, had found her way to the communications center. The Veth had jammed all outgoing signals, but jamming was just another form of communication. It had patterns. It had weaknesses. She spent 40 minutes studying those patterns, while the sounds of fighting echoed through the station. Her fingers moved across the console with desperate speed. She was not a soldier, but she was very good at her job. The Veth jamming signal had 17 frequencies. She found holes in 12 of them. She rewired the station's communication array to exploit those holes, sending distress calls in short bursts that slipped through the interference, like water through cracks in a dam. Then she turned the jamming signal against the Veth. Themselves, the Veth warriors used helmet-based communications to coordinate their attacks. When those communications suddenly filled with static and feedback, their coordination collapsed. Squads lost contact with each other. Orders went unheard. The perfect military machine became a collection of confused individuals. The humans, who had no communications equipment at all, were unaffected. They had been fighting without coordination from the beginning. They were used to it. The siege lasted 9 hours. The Veth commander, a veteran of 30 campaigns, later testified before the Galactic Council about what he had experienced. His voice was quiet. His eyes were distant. He spoke like a man who had seen something that had broken his understanding of the universe. "We outnumbered them 20 to 1, he said. "We had better weapons, better armor, better training. We had every advantage that exists in warfare." He paused. His claws clicked together in what the Koran translators recognized as a sign of deep distress. "They used mining equipment," he continued. "They used furniture. They used their bare hands. One human female attacked my warriors with a fire extinguisher. She was a cook. She had never held a weapon in her life. She killed 2 of my best soldiers before we brought her down." He looked at the council members. His alien eyes filled with something that might have been respect or might have been terror. "They were not soldiers," he said. "They told us they were not soldiers. But they fought like something from our ancient nightmare texts. They fought like demons. They fought like they did not know how to stop." The council chamber was silent.
Ow.
"We lost 83 warriors," the commander said. 83 of our elite. Our best. Our pride." He shook his head slowly. "The humans lost 2. A miner named Gong Tamin and an engineer named Rusil He. Neither was military. Both died protecting others." He stood there for a long moment looking at nothing. "I have fought many species," he said finally. I have conquered many worlds, but I have never faced anything like humans. I do not think the galaxy has ever faced anything like humans." He turned and walked out of the chamber without waiting for permission. No one tried to stop him. On Mora Station, the surviving humans gathered in the damaged common area. They were exhausted. They were injured. They were covered in blood, some of it their own, and some of it not. Lieutenant Yoon. Daesoon looked at them. Miners, engineers, cooks, communications specialists, ordinary people who had done extraordinary things because there was no other choice. "You did good," he said. His voice was hoarse. His hands were shaking. "You all did good." Corporal Beek Sujin sat in the corner, staring at her hands. She had killed 3 Veth warriors. She had saved hundreds of lives. She did not feel proud. She did not feel heroic. She felt tired and sad and slightly sick, but she also felt something else. Something quiet and hard and unbreakable. She felt human. Outside, the Veth warships retreated into hyperspace. They had come for easy prey. They had found something very different. They would not make that mistake again. But the galaxy had noticed. The galaxy had seen what happened when ordinary humans faced elite warriors. The galaxy had watched 16 untrained civilians defeat 300, bred for war soldiers. And the galaxy had begun to wonder, if human civilians could do this, what could human soldiers do? If human soldiers could do this, what could human special forces do? No one wanted to find out. No one wanted to push humans far enough to discover the answer. But somewhere, in the dark spaces between stars, those questions waited. And the answers were more terrible than anyone could imagine. The Galactic Council Chamber was the largest enclosed space in the known universe. It had been built 3,000 years ago when the first species had reached the stars and decided they needed a place to talk instead of fight. The ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. The floor was made of stone from 47 different worlds, each piece representing a member species. Today, all 47 species had sent their representatives. They sat in a great circle around the central platform, their translator devices, humming quietly as they converted languages into something everyone could understand. They had come to discuss the humans. General Ojine stood alone on the central platform. She was a small woman by human standards, barely reaching the shoulder of most galactic species. Her hair was black with streaks of gray, pulled back in a simple style. Her uniform was plain and undecorated. She wore no medals, no ribbons, no signs of rank beyond the stars on her collar. She did not look dangerous. She looked like someone's grandmother, but every representative in the chamber knew what she was. Commander of Human Combined Forces. The woman who controlled every soldier, every ship, every weapon in human space. The woman who had fought in 3 wars and won them all. High Counselor Tress opened the session. She was an ancient Marin, her shell cracked and weathered by centuries of life. Her voice was thin but carried easily in the perfect acoustics of the chamber. "General O," she said, "you know why you have been summoned?" Janae nodded. "I do, High Counselor. The incident at Mora Station has raised questions, concerns." Fear's Tress leaned forward, her multiple eyes focusing on the human. 16 of your civilians defeated 300 elite Veth warriors. Civilians, General, not soldiers, not trained fighters, miners and engineers, and cooks. "That is correct," Janae said. "And your regular soldiers, the ones we have observed at Station Thatnine and elsewhere, they move like predators. They fight like nothing we have ever seen. They are classified as average, yet they exceed the capabilities of our finest warriors." "That is also correct." Tress was silent for a moment. Around the chamber, representatives shifted in their seats. Tension was thick enough to taste. "Explain," Tress said finally. "The Council demands an explanation. What are humans?" She had prepared for this moment. She had known it was coming since the reports from Mara Station reached Earth. The galaxy had seen too much. It could no longer pretend that humans were just another species. "We are survivors, High Counselor," she said. Her voice was calm, steady, almost gentle. "Our world is not kind. It has never been kind. Our planet has earthquakes that swallow cities, storms that flatten mountains, diseases that kill millions. Our sun burns us in summer, and our winters freeze us solid. Every year, our world tries to kill us in new and creative ways. She paused, letting the words sink in. And that is just our planet. Our own bodies betray us. We grow old and weak. Our organs fail. Our minds decay. We have 1,000 ways to die and only a few short years to live them. The chamber was absolutely silent. So we learned to fight, Janae continued. Not because we wanted to, because we had no choice. We fought our environment. We fought disease. We fought each other. For 200,000 years, we have been fighting simply to exist. She turned slowly, looking at the representatives from different species. Some of them had evolved on paradise worlds, where food was plentiful and predators were rare. Some had developed technology before they developed violence. Some had never known war at all. None of them understood what it meant to be human. Every human child learns to struggle before they can walk, Janae said. Play games of war. We compete in everything. By the time a human reaches adulthood, they have already experienced more conflict than most species experience in a lifetime. She stopped turning and faced Tress directly. Then some of us joined the military. We trained for 2 years before we were allowed to see combat. We run 40 kilometers with heavy weight on our backs. We learned to fight with weapons, with tools, with our bare hands. We learned to survive in any environment. We learned to function on 4 hours of sleep, on empty stomachs, in conditions that would kill most species. And this produces your regular soldiers, Tress asked. Yes, the ones you consider average. Another silence fell over the chamber. The Veth representative, seated in the far corner, had not moved since the session began. His scales were pale. His eyes were fixed on the floor. Finally, a voice spoke from the Corin section. Ambassador. Vrel, older now, and more cautious than he had been years ago. General O, he said, I've heard rumors, whispers, stories that we hoped were exaggerations. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. Your special forces, what are they? The chamber seemed to hold its breath. Janae smiled. It was a small smile, polite and professional. But there was something behind it, something old and hard and very, very patient. Every species has elite warriors, she said. Your finest, your best. The ones you send when nothing else will work. We know what elite warriors are, Tress said impatiently. You're asking what yours are. Janae nodded slowly. Our special forces are soldiers who complete regular training and then continue. They train for 2 more years. 3 more years. 5 more years. They learn skills that we do not discuss with outsiders. They operate in conditions that would break normal soldiers. They do things that most humans cannot imagine. She paused. They are the ones we send when regular soldiers are not enough. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. But I must be clear, Janae continued. Special forces are rare, difficult to produce. Only a small number of humans qualify. Most never attempt the training. Most who attempt it fail. That is meant to comfort us, the Morin representative asked. There was anger in his voice, but also fear. No, Janae said simply. It is meant to help you understand. Our special forces are exceptional even by human standards. They're the peak of what we can become. She turned again, looking at the assembled species. But they are not different from other humans. They are not a separate breed. They are not born special. They are ordinary people who chose to train longer, work harder, sacrifice more. Her voice softened. Any human could become special forces. Most choose not to, but the potential is there. In every single one of us, Vrel spoke again. The civilians at Mara Station, the miners and cooks, were they special forces? No. They were ordinary people, completely untrained for combat. Yet they defeated elite warriors, yes? How? Janae was quiet for a moment. When she answered, her voice was almost sad. Because they were human.
What?
Because 200,000 years of survival is coded into our blood. Because when we are pushed, when we are threatened, when we have no other choice, we become something more than we normally are. She met Vrel's eyes. Your elite warriors trained for 20 cycles. Our civilians trained for 20 years. It's every day of their lives, every moment of struggle, every small conflict. It was all training. She turned back to Tress. You ask what humans are, High Counselor? We are survivors. We are fighters. We are a species that has clawed its way out of extinction so many times that death has become just another enemy to defeat. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. And our special forces are the best of us. The ones who have taken everything it means to be human and made it into something sharper, something harder, something that the galaxy should pray it never has to face. The session ended shortly after that. No one asked any more questions. No one demanded any more answers. They had heard enough as Janae walked out of the chamber. She passed the Veth representative. He looked up at her with eyes that held no anger, no hatred. Just a kind of tired acceptance. Will you ever use them? Your special forces? Janae stopped. She looked at him for a long moment. We hope not, she said. We truly hope not. Then she walked away, leaving the galaxy to wonder about the warriors they would never see until it was too late. The research vessel Starlight had been studying a nebula when the Veth intercepted it. 32 scientists, biologists, physicists, astronomers, people who had dedicated their lives to understanding the universe, not fighting in it. The Veth took them to their homeworld, to Fortress Kareth, the most secure military installation in Veth space. They made demands. They wanted technology. They wanted territory. They wanted the humans to know fear. The Galactic Council urged negotiation. They sent diplomats. They offered compromises. They did everything peaceful species do when faced with hostage situations. The humans agreed to negotiate. They sent their own diplomats. They talked and discussed and made careful proposals. And while all of this was happening, Captain Shin Wujin was already moving. His team had 12 members. They were not officially listed in any military database. Their names did not appear on any roster. As far as the galaxy knew, they did not exist. They traveled in a vessel no larger than a shuttle. For 6 days, they crossed Veth space without being detected. They ate cold rations. They slept in shifts of 90 minutes. They spoke only in hand signals, even though there was no one to hear them. Sergeant Choi Nari was the youngest member of the team. She was 23 years old. She had been Special Forces for 2 years. Before that, she had been a regular soldier. Before that, she had been a university student studying poetry. Now, she was something else entirely. She sat in the corner of the shuttle, checking her equipment for the 20th time. Her movements were automatic, mechanical, perfect. Every strap was tight. Every weapon was clean. Every tool was exactly where it needed to be. Beside her, Sergeant Han Jita cleaned his knife. He was 31, the oldest member of the team besides the captain. He had been Special Forces for 7 years. He did not talk much, did not need to. The mission briefing had been short. The fortress had 4,000 soldiers. Automated defense grids covered every approach. Orbital satellites tracked objects down to 10 centimeters. Every entrance was guarded, every corridor monitored, every shadow watched. Getting in was supposed to be impossible. Possible was not a word Special Forces used. On the 7th day, they reached the Veth homeworld. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere at night, running cold and silent, invisible to sensors that were designed to detect ships 100 times its size. They landed in a forest 20 kilometers from the fortress. They moved the rest of the way on foot. Nari had trained for this. She had run through jungles and deserts and frozen wastelands. She had learned to move without sound, without trace, without existence. But training was different from reality. Reality had consequences. She thought about the scientists in the fortress. 32 people who had never asked for any of this. 32 people who were counting on her team to save them. She did not allow herself to think about failure. The fortress walls rose 50 meters into the night sky. Guard towers stood at every corner, their lights sweeping the ground in predictable patterns. Sensors covered every centimeter of the surface. Captain Wujin signaled a halt. The team melted into the shadows, becoming part of the darkness itself. They waited. At exactly 0347 local time, the fortress power grid failed. It only lasted 11 seconds. A backup system activated almost immediately. The lights flickered and returned. The sensors blinked and resumed their sweep. The guards looked around in confusion, then returned to their posts. Nothing seemed wrong, but in those 11 seconds, 12 shadows had crossed the open ground and disappeared into the fortress. Nari moved through the corridors like a ghost. She had memorized the layout from stolen blueprints, left at the junction. Right at the stairwell, down to levels. Through the maintenance shaft, she encountered her first guard in the second corridor. He was tall and armored, his weapon held ready, his eyes scanning the darkness. He never saw her. She was past him before his body hit the floor. The team split into 4 groups. Each group had a specific objective. Nari's group was responsible for the scientists. Han's group was handling security systems. 2 other groups were creating distractions and covering the escape route. Everything happened in silence. There were no explosions, no alarms, no shouted orders. It's just shadows moving through shadows. And guards who fell asleep and never woke up. The scientists were held in a detention block on the 3rd level. 20 guards protected them. Camera systems monitored every angle. Motion sensors covered every approach. Nari's group reached the block at 0359. At 0400, the cameras showed empty corridors. At 0401, the motion sensors reported nothing unusual. At 0402, 20 guards were unconscious or dead, and 32 scientists were following for Special Forces operators through a maintenance tunnel that was not supposed to exist. The escape took longer than the infiltration. Moving civilians through hostile territory was different from moving alone. The scientists were scared. They made noise. They moved slowly, but Nari had trained for this too. "Stay close," she whispered. "Follow my steps exactly. Do not speak. Do not stop." A scientist, an older woman with gray hair and frightened eyes, grabbed Nari's arm. "Who are you?" she asked. Nari did not answer. There was no time for answers. They reached the extraction point at 0447. The shuttle was waiting, cold and silent. The scientists boarded quickly, helped by team members who moved with calm efficiency. Nari was the last one in. She turned and looked back at the fortress. The lights were still on. The guards were still patrolling. Nothing seemed wrong. In a few hours, the Veth would discover that their prisoners were gone. They would search the security recordings and find nothing. They would check their sensor logs and find nothing. They would interrogate their guards, the ones who survived, and learn nothing. The only evidence of what had happened would be a single boot print in the mud outside the eastern wall. It belonged to Nari. She had stepped wrong during the approach, left a mark when she should have left nothing. It was her only mistake. The shuttle lifted off and disappeared into the night. By the time the Veth realized what had happened, the team was already 3 systems away. The Veth High Command issued a report the next day. It was classified at the highest level, shared only with the most senior military leaders. The report was 4 words long: "Do not provoke humanity." On the shuttle, Captain Wu Zhang gathered his team for a debriefing. They sat in a circle, tired but alert, reviewing every moment of the mission. Nari Wu Zhang said, "The boot print." She nodded. "I know. I apologize, Captain." Wu Jin looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled just slightly. "You've saved 32 lives tonight," he said. "All of you did. The mission was successful. The scientists are safe. The enemy has been shown that their most secure fortress is not secure enough." He stood up and looked at each team member in turn. "We do not exist. We were never here. This mission never happened." He paused. "But what we did tonight will echo through the galaxy. The Veth will tell stories about this. Other species will hear those stories. They will wonder and fear and respect." His voice softened. "That is our purpose. Not to fight wars, to prevent them. Every enemy who fears us is an enemy who will not attack. Every fortress that seems unsafe is a fortress that will not be built." He sat back down. "Get some sleep. We have a long journey home." The team dispersed to their bunks. Nari found her corner and sat down, but she did not sleep. She thought about the scientists she had rescued. She thought about the guards she had killed. She thought about the boot print she had left behind. She was 23 years old. She had been Special Forces for 2 years. She was one of the deadliest humans alive, and she still wrote poetry in her spare time. She still called her mother every week. She still dreamed of a future where she could be something other than a weapon. But that future was not today. Today she was what humanity needed her to be, a ghost, shadow, a nightmare made real. Tomorrow she would be something else. Tonight she was Special Forces. And that was enough. 2 years passed. The galaxy changed in ways that no one had expected. Piracy in human-adjacent space dropped by 94%. Not because humans hunted down every pirate. They did not need to. The stories did the work for them. Every criminal who considered raiding human shipping lanes thought about Mora Station. They thought about what 16 untrained civilians had done to 300 elite warriors. They thought about what actual soldiers might do. They chose different targets. 3 aggressive, species-signed non-aggression pacts with humanity without a single shot being fired. Their ambassadors came to Earth with gifts and promises, their voices careful and their eyes nervous. They had heard about Fortress Kareth. They had heard about the ghosts who walked through walls and left no trace. They decided that peace was better than finding out if the stories were true. The Veth hegemony sent tribute ships twice a year. They called them gifts. They called them tokens of friendship. Everyone knew they were apologies. The galaxy had learned to fear humans. Not the loud, obvious fear of immediate danger. The quiet, persistent fear of something vast and patient. Something that did not need to prove itself because it already had. Ambassador Yunhana represented Earth at the Galactic Border Summit that year. She was a diplomat, not a soldier. She had spent her career in meeting rooms and conference halls, negotiating treaties and resolving disputes. She had never held a weapon. She had never been trained to fight, but she had grown up in Busan. She had survived economic collapse and natural disasters. She had learned, like every human, that the universe was harsh and survival required strength. She walked through the summit halls with a single aide. Lieutenant Beijun. He was young, quiet, forgettable. He carried nothing but a tablet and a calm expression. Most species did not notice him at all. That was intentional. The summit was held on a neutral station, much like the one where Ambassador Varel had first met human soldiers. Representatives from dozens of species mingled in the corridors, discussing borders and trade routes and the usual business of galactic politics. Hana spoke with many of them. She smiled. She nodded. She made polite conversation about unimportant things. She was exactly what a diplomat was supposed to be. During a break in the formal sessions, a large figure approached her. He was Morik, one of the insect-like species that operated in the outer reaches. His shell was black and gleaming, his eyes compound and expressionless. The Morik were known for many things. None of them were good. He towered over her by nearly 2 meters. His voice was a clicking hiss that the translator struggled to convert. Ambassador Yun, he said, I have wanted to meet a human for some time. Hana looked up at him without expression. Representative Crass, the pleasure is mine. Is it? He moved closer, deliberately invading her space. His mandibles clicked together in what might have been amusement. Your species has an impressive reputation. Stories travel far in this galaxy. So I have heard. Oh, but I wonder. He leaned down, his compound eyes centimeters from her face. How much of it is true? And how much is merely stories? Hannah did not step back. She did not look away. She stood exactly where she was, a small human woman facing a creature 3 times her size. What would you like to know? She asked. I would like to know what happens when someone calls your bluff. And his voice dropped to a whisper. Your special forces are impressive, but they are few. Your soldiers are dangerous, but they cannot be everywhere. What happens when someone decides that your reputation is worth testing? Lieutenant Jun looked up from his tablet. His expression did not change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Hana smiled. It was a small smile, polite and professional. We do not bluff, she said. The words hung in the air between them. Simple words. Ordinary words. But something about the way she said them made Crass hesitate. He looked at her. He looked at the young lieutenant beside her. He looked around the corridor at the other diplomats who had stopped their conversations to watch. Then, slowly he stepped back. Perhaps, he said, I will test that theory another time. He turned and walked away. His movements were not quite as confident as they had been before. Hana watched him go. Then she resumed her walk through the corridor, her aide beside her, as if nothing had happened. Later that evening, she stood on the observation deck. The stars spread out before her, like scattered diamonds. Beautiful and cold and infinitely distant, a familiar voice spoke behind her. Ambassador Yoon. It has been many years. She turned to find Ambassador Varel approaching. He was older now, his scales silvered with age, his movements slower than they had once been. But his eyes were still sharp, still curious. Ambassador Varel, she said. I heard you had retired. I did. But events have a way of drawing one back. He stood beside her, looking out at the stars. I have watched your species for a long time. Since that first meeting at Station That-9 when I saw what your regular soldiers could do. And what have you concluded? Brel was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. I saw the incident with the Moric representative, he said. You did not threaten him. You did not posture. You simply stood there, a small human with no weapons and no guards, and you made him back down. He chose to back down. Did he? Vrel turned to look at her. Or did he see something in your eyes? Something that reminded him of all the stories he has heard? Hannah did not answer. Your special forces are terrifying, Vrel continued. The galaxy fears them like they fear nothing else. But they are so few. A few hundred at most. They cannot possibly protect every human, every ship, every world. Hana agreed. They cannot. And yet the galaxy fears you completely. Not just your soldiers. Not just your special forces. Every human, everywhere. He shook his head slowly. I still do not understand. What are you? Hana looked at the stars for a long moment. Then she turned to face the old ambassador. Our special forces are just regular people who trained a little longer, she said. Our regular soldiers are just civilians who trained a little longer. Our civilians are just people who have survived every day of their lives on a world that wanted them dead. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Every human you meet, ambassador, is 3 months of training away from being dangerous. 6 months from being deadly, a year from being special forces. Her voice softened. We are all just potential. Every single one of us. The stories you have heard about our warriors are true, but the truth behind those stories is simpler than you think. There is nothing special about special forces. They are just humans who have become more of what they already were. She smiled, warm and genuine, and somehow deeply unsettling. The representative from Moric did not back down because he was afraid of my aid. He backed down because he was afraid of me. Because he looked into my eyes and saw the same thing he sees in every human. The same thing you saw in Private Kim Hannah all those years ago. A survivor. Someone who has fought every day of their life just to exist. Someone who does not know how to give up, how to surrender, how to accept defeat. She turned back to the stars. We are not warriors by choice, Ambassador. We are warriors by necessity. Every single one of us. And when we are pushed, when we are threatened, when we have no other choice, we become something that the galaxy has never seen before. Rel was silent for a very long time. I think he said finally, I shall recommend that my government never push you, never threaten you, never give you any reason to become what you are capable of becoming. Hana nodded. That would be wise. And the other species? The ones like the Moric who think they can test your reputation. Hana looked at him, and for just a moment he saw something ancient in her eyes. Something that had been forged in 200,000 years of struggle and survival and endless. Unrelenting war against everything the universe could throw at humanity. They will learn, she said quietly. One way or another, they will learn. Vrel believed her. He had seen what humans called regular soldiers. He had heard about what humans called special forces. And now he understood what humans really were. Not a species of warriors, a species of survivors, and survivors, he realized, were far more dangerous than any warrior could ever be. Because warriors fought until they won or lost. Survivors fought until everything else stopped moving. He looked at the small human woman standing beside him, watching the stars with patient, ancient eyes, and he was very glad that humanity considered him a friend because he had seen the alternative, and the alternative was terrifying.